Jade. The name jade includes two distinct minerals, nephrite and jadeite. The former is a silicate of magnesia, of exceedingly tough structure, and ranks 6.5 in the scale of hardness, while jadeite, a silicate of alumina, is more crystalline and not as tough as nephrite, and has a hardness of 7. A variety having a rich emerald green hue is called by the Chinese fe cui, kingfisher plumes. It is also denominated imperial jade. The original form of the Chinese character pao, signifying precious, consists of the outline of a house, within which are the symbols of jade beads, shell, and an earthen jar. This shows that at the very early time when these characters were first used, the Chinese already collected jade and employed it for personal adornment. The oldest form of the ideograph for king appeared to be the symbol for a string of jade beads, which are even now used in China as insignia for high rank and authority. Jade amulets of many different forms are popular with the Chinese. One representing two men is called Two Brothers of Heavenly Love and is often given to friends. A phoenix of jade is a favorite ornament for young girls and is bestowed upon them when they come of age. To a newly wedded pair is given the figure of a man riding on a unicorn and holding castanets in his hand. This signifies that an heir will be born in due time. Such is the fondness of the Chinese for jade that those who can afford the luxury of its possession are wont to carry with them small pieces so that they may have them always at hand, for they believe that when handled, something of the secret virtue of the substance is absorbed into the body. When struck, jade is thought to emit a peculiarly melodious sound, which for the Chinese poet resembles the voice of the loved one. Indeed, jade is termed the concentrated essence of love. Fashioned into the form of a butterfly, a piece of jade acquires a special romantic significance in China because of a Chinese legend which relates that a youth in his early pursuit of a many-hued butterfly made his way into the garden of a rich mandarin. Instead of being published for his trespass, the youth's unceremonious visit led to his marriage with the mandarin's daughter. Hence, the figure of a butterfly is a symbol of successful love, and Chinese bridegrooms are wont to present jade butterflies to their fiancés. A Chinese jade ornament constituting a child's amulet assumes a form approximating to that of a padlock. When this is attached to a child's neck, it is supposed to bind the little one to life and protect it from all danger in infantile diseases. A jade object of a different kind is sometimes used at nuptial feasts in China. This is a cup having the form of a cock, and both bride and groom drink from it. The form of this vessel is accounted for by a legend to the effect that when a beautiful white cock saw its young mistress, who had often petted it, threw herself into a well in a transport of despair at the loss of her lover, the faithful fowl sought and found death in the same way, so as not to be separated from its mistress. Among the splendid Chinese jade carvings of the Woodward collection is a curious symbolic ornament carved out of the rare Fei Yu, or kingfisher green jade, a rich emerald green jadeite with translucent green shading. This ornament, executed in the beginning of the 18th century and believed to be a product of the imperial jade works in Peking, figures the natural form of a so-called hand of Buddha citron, the finger-like protuberances of the fruit suggesting this strangely fanciful name. The Chinese regard this as a most felicitous emblem, denoting at once a long life and abundance of riches for its enjoyment. In the present carving, the figure of a bat clinging to the foliage, enveloping the fruit, constitutes an added omen of good fortune. The Chinese character fu, signifying at once bat and happiness, another proof of what we are prone to call Chinese queerness, for with the superstitious of our race the bat is always looked upon as especially ill-omened. It is a well-known fact that many analogies have been found between the customs, usages, and products of the more civilized aborigines of the New World and those of the ancient Egyptians. Another instance is offered by the custom of placing a piece of Chalchihuitl jade or of some other green stone in the mouth of a noble after his death, and calling this his heart. Among the lower classes, a tehahakli, a stone of small value, was used for the same purpose. We shall see that in the Egyptian Book of the Dead, directions are given for putting a semi-precious stone on or in a mummy as a symbol, and designating this the heart of the deceased person. For the use of a green stone for this purpose by the ancient Mexicans, Mrs. Zelia Nuttall finds a reason in the two meanings of the Nahuatl word Hohoquiyotl, which is used to signify a free man, the literal meaning being a fresh or green heart. Hence the stone was a symbol of the rank of the deceased as well as of his heart. The fact that jade celts have been found cut into several pieces is taken to indicate the high value placed upon this material. For it has been conjectured by Dr. Earl Flint that a living chief would cut a piece from the jade he wore as a sign of his rank, in order to provide a suitable ornament or amulet for a dead kinsman. To certain of the Chinese tomb jades, that is, jade amulets deposited with the dead, has been given the name hanyu, or mouth jade, because these amulets, supposed to afford protection to the dead, were placed in their mouths. The Metropolitan Museum of Art in New York contains a fine collection of 279 specimens of jade from Chinese tombs, found within the past 5 or 6 years, and presented to the museum by Mr. Samuel F. Peters. In color, these jades are not especially attractive, for the material has acquired a brownish stain due to the products of decomposition of the body, and also to the absorption of some of the chemical constituents of the other objects in the tomb during the long period of time, in many cases 1,000 years or more, since the bodies were consigned to their final resting place. So multifarious are the uses to which jade is put by the Chinese, and so great is their admiration of its qualities, that they regard it as the musical gem par excellence. A series of oblong pieces of jade, of the same length and width, usually about 1.8 feet long and 1.35 feet wide, and numbering from 12 to 24, constitute a chime, the difference in the notes emitted by the material when sharply struck depending upon the varying thickness of the separate pieces. What is designated the stone chime used in court and religious ceremonials is composed of 16 undecorated stones, while a series known as the singer's chime consists of from 12 to 24 pieces carved into fantastic shapes. This use of jade for the production of musical sounds dates far back in the Chinese annals. We are told that when Confucius was much troubled at the ill success of his efforts to reform the Chinese morals of his day, he sought consolation in playing on the musical stone. A peasant who noted this in passing by exclaimed, as he heard the sounds, "Full indeed is the heart of him who beats the musical stone like that." A jade ornament greatly favored by the Maoris of New Zealand bore the name heitiki, a carved image for the neck. The ornaments of this class are very rude and grotesque representations of the human face or form, and were generally regarded as schematically figuring some departed ancestor. The head sometimes slanted right or left, so that the eyes, which were very large and occasionally inlaid with mother of pearl, were on an angle of 45 degrees. These ornaments were prized not only as memorials, but because, having been worn by successive ancestors, they were supposed to communicate something of the very being of those ancestors to such descendants as were privileged to wear the treasured heirloom in their turn. In many cases, when the family was dying out, the last male member would leave directions that his heitiki should be buried with him, so that it might not fall into the hands of strangers. So rare was this New Zealand jade, known to the Maoris as punamu, green stone, that the aid of a tohunga or wizard was regarded as necessary to learn where it could be found. On setting forth on a search for this material, the jade seekers would take with them a tohunga, and when the party reached the region where jade was usually found, the tohunga would retire to some solitary spot and would fall into a trance. On awakening, he would claim that the spirit of some person, dead or living, had appeared to him, and had directed to search in a particular place for the jade. He would then conduct the party to this place, where a larger or smaller piece of jade was invariably found. Of course, the wizard had previously assured himself of the presence of the stone in the place indicated. To this jade was given the name of the man whose spirit had revealed its location, and in many cases the grotesque form given to the stone was conceived to represent this man. We can easily understand the reverence accorded to the heitikis when we consider that they were not only prized as heirlooms which had been handed down by the successive heads of the family, but were also believed to have been originally found in such a mysterious way. When the head of the family died, his heitiki was generally buried with his body, but was exhumed after a shorter or longer time by the nearest male relative. As we have noted, if no representative of the family remained, the heirloom was allowed to remain in the grave. The fact that tribal or intertribal feuds sometimes arose in regard to the possession of a heitiki serves to prove the peculiar virtues ascribed to them. While there can be little doubt that the heirloom was supposed to represent in a very general way the person whose name it bore, the particular form given it was largely determined by the natural shape of the mass, which was slowly and patiently fashioned into the form it eventually acquired. Though this was mainly due to the imperfect means of which the artist disposed, there was probably a conviction that the form of the natural stone was not the result of accident, but was in itself significant and required only to be rendered more clear and definite. The fabrication of the heitikis of the Maoris is said to have ceased in the early part of the last century. The greater number of those that have been collected in New Zealand appear to have been made from 100 to 150 years ago.